Delighted to introduce Shruti Jha, who is an environmental consultant, 5 years experience in the energy sector, specializing in emissions regulation, monitoring and greenhouse gas accounting, dealing with product carbon footprint and environmental due diligence. Shruti holds a master's degree in energy and environmental sciences and a bachelor's in chemical engineering. And Shruti is going to talk to us about addressing emissions monitoring challenges under the revised Industrial Emissions Directive.
Good morning, everyone. As much as I'm honored to speak after Leslie, I think I'm also a bit intimidated. She has had 34 years of experience. I am just starting out. This is my first ever SEMS I'm attending, and as a speaker, that too is, I think, a bit more than I can chew, but I have a kind audience. So let me start the presentation. So I'll be speaking about the key challenges for quality assurance as well as validation, measurement validation for the SEMS in purview of the new IED2. And before we deep dive, a bit about my company, DNV. It's a global risk assurance and management company, especially with energy advisory, certification, and other all sundry services. I am part of this service. Today we'll be going through six topics, barring the introduction. And the focus will be on emission limit values, type testing uncertainty, measurement validation, as well as the standard reference method. These 4 would be the topics I would be touching in the background of IED2. To start with, the introduction. Well, in IED2, there have been many changes, but what we focus on is the change in setting the emission limit value, that's the ELV. The change can be seen with the word exceed. In its original provision, emission limit value should not have exceeded the BART-AEL range. And it meant that for practically, it gave the opportunity for installations to set the emission limit value at the highest end of the range. But this word exceed has now been changed to strictest achievable level in the BART-AEL range. This means that while the installations had the opportunity to be at the higher end, now have to be at the strictest end. And in Netherlands, especially, the permits have been starting off with less than the stricter end. This means tighter conditions. And this is what we'll move on to. Stricter ELV requirements, which also means tighter conditions. And we can see that by taking the example of sulfur dioxide, let's say at a coal-fired boiler. For this, the BART-AEL range, considering it's a new plant, is 10 to 75 units. Now, ELV, the emission limit value, based on it, originally on the word should not exceed, could be set at 75 units. But now with the IED2, it will be, let's assume for this example, it will be 25 units, meaning tighter limit. We can see that the ELV has gone from 75 to 25, 1/3. That's very tight. And this has an implication and cascading effect on the maximum permissible unit uncertainty as well as the quality assurance limits. We can see that where the maximum permissible uncertainty was 15, it too has gone down to 5. This implies that it's tighter limit, tighter uncertainty, harder to certify and harder to validate. Not only is the ELV limit tight, but also the determination of ELV is not so straightforward anymore. The previous approach, or I can say the current approach before IED2, was that ELVs could be set at the upper end of the BART-AEL. But now there is a whole process involved. Now each installation must determine its own emission limit value. And how so? First, they need to refer to the BREF abatement documentation, compare the installation's abatement process to the one given in the document, then apply the annual concentration against the abatement technique, and finally derive the maximum daily or monthly value. This leads to 2 concerns. One, that BART EL values cannot be directly translated into the ELVs. And second, that for low concentrations, the difference between the new and the old process, the difference in the limits could be substantial. In fact, in Netherlands, we're also seeing that with deriving their own limits, some of them have set really low values and are having a hard time even achieving them. As an example to how it's not straightforward, I have created this example from the annex of one of the BART-AEL documents. Taking the same sulfur dioxide example, the yearly average is 10 units. And for this, against in the document, the maximum daily average limit is 25. But if your installation's annual limit was to be 20, you could not use this 25.